Welcome to Tell Us Why, a podcast for the financial freedom community. If you're looking to succeed in your quest for financial freedom, make sure you join us every week as we, along with our guests, discuss different stories of success, how they were achieved, and how you can do the same. And of course, we ask them to tell us why. Here are your hosts, Jack and Mike.
Welcome to the Tell Us Why podcast. I'm your host, Jack Darapel, here alongside my co-host, Mr. Michael Ketchen. Today we were talking with Molly Schwartz. After a decade in the marketing space, Molly left to open Boston's first sustainable bridal store. The concept of Glo came to her after her own wedding in 2019 while embracing a more sustainable way to build her wardrobe through secondhand buying, renting, and prioritizing eco-conscious clothing brands. But before we get to Molly's episode, Mike, what's going on in the business these days?
Things are great, man. We are under contract to sell part of our portfolio. So doing a huge 1031 exchange for the first time, figuring that all out. Actually, should probably do an episode just on the 1031 exchange because it's definitely something different.
Not a bad idea.
A little bit more in the weeds.
Yeah.
That's exciting. So it's kind of
tax avoidance.
Yes, most important. No, tax
deferment.
Deferment.
Sorry.
So it's exciting stuff. But what do you got cooking? I know you got some stuff going on.
Well, just had a meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning with. Had to get in a fight this morning, so that's always fun. Great way to start the day. I got a contractor that's trying to give me the shaft, I think. So had a quote at $8,000 and somehow it came in at 12.5, and I'm like, not sure that's okay. But that's one of the Airbnbs we just closed on a couple months ago, and so I'm in a great mood. Other than that,
yeah, and before we get to Molly's episodes, that's something else we should also touch on. I'm just starting to think we can do some more in the weeds episodes because. What do you do? When a quote goes sideways, or how is that communicated, and what are tips to handle that?
Yeah.
Definitely some stuff. But on this episode, Molly, unbelievable energy, unbelievable guest. I learned a ton. Super exciting, whole different industry, and I'm always intrigued by that to see the themes, but also just the way she approached it. Yeah, I thought it was great.
I mean, I just if you listen to the subtleties of the nuggets that she throws out there, it's just the demographic shifts, the COVID effect on the bridal industry. She's in tune. She's very, very smart. If you listen to those nuggets that she throws out, you have to be listening for them, at those economic indicators that she just picked up on naturally and then exploited in the best way, in the best sense of the word.
Yeah, and not even exploit it. I think it's really, it's finding a solution when others only see problems. Was really my takeaway.
Exactly.
So that was great. But before we get to this episode, let's hear who this week's brought to us by. What do you say?
Let's do it.
Are you sick of being treated like just another number by large insurance companies? Do you want a more personalized experience with somebody that you can trust? With Keith Monteith, that's exactly what you'll get. Keith is an experienced professional who can design an insurance plan tailored to fit your specific needs. With access to over 30 insurance carriers, Keith is able to shop numerous markets to find a price that works for you. So if you want an insurance agent that you can rely on and one that has your best interests at heart, then call or text Keith today on 978-241-2363. That's 978-241-2363. Keith Monty. He'll get you covered.
Okay, so we are back. Like I said, Molly spent some time in the marketing tech space, and during her struggling, maybe, I don't know, we'll see, with her wedding preparation and just finding sustainable ways to build her wardrobe, she came up with the concept of Glo Bridal. So let's start there. Molly, why don't you tell everyone who you are and where your business is at today?
Totally. Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Molly Swarttz. I'm the owner of Glo Bridal. We're in Newton, Massachusetts. The highest level story of me is I'm a tech dropout who now owns a brick and mortar sustainable bridal store a mile away from my house. So I'm optimizing for work and lifestyle that I'm actually interested in, which is amazing. It's made a world of difference to actually care about what I'm doing and be personally invested in my business. So Glo Bridal has been open. It will be a year next month. We kind of opened in the height of the pandemic, and when weddings were almost picking up again, 2022, this year is the craziest wedding year since 1984. So I kind of saw that there was a time frame I really had to jump on this idea. And nothing felt better than just kind of taking this leap of faith. I did overlap a little bit with my tech job. So about 6 months, I would just work the store on the weekends and still work my 9 to 5 in tech. And then around November of last year, I went full time into the store.
Molly, I want to jump in there to tell the listeners right where we're at. So we got Glo Bridal. What makes Glo Bridal different and unique from other wedding stores out there?
Yes. So Glo Bridal is specifically focused on sustainable designs and purchases that you can make around your wedding. So we have a mix of brand new made to order dresses. So you come in and you try on wedding dress samples like the typical bridal store experience. You find a dress you love, we take your measurements, and then we order you a dress to size. For those designs, we only work with North American designers who we know are creating sustainably, ethically, sourcing locally, just making choices that you know you can feel good about with your dress. Most wedding dresses are made overseas in China and can be very cheap. And people who are creating those dresses are not paid fairly. They're not treated well. Those are the things that we really care about when we're prioritizing who we work with. So that's one segment of our business. The other one is we also sell wedding dresses on consignment. So dresses that have been worn before or were purchased, but were not worn. So we have 2 options for our brides that come in the store, depending on what they're looking for.
Okay, that's awesome. And that actually is a great segue into kind of want to jump back into your intro here. You're doing the unconventional thing. You're going against the grain here. You're leaving the tech space, the big buzzword that everybody wants to be in, to go backwards to brick and mortar. What is that conversation like when you come back and, you tell your spouse or you tell your family, do they all just think you're nuts and what the hell are you doing? Or, bring us back that time. It's a pandemic. You're nuts. Retail's closing. Amazon owns everything. Yes. Walk us through those conversations.
Yes. So I had been thinking about doing this business since my wedding, which was pre-pandemic 2019. So I had started kind of coming up with the idea when, and this is, I think, the case for most people who end up in bridal and opening a bridal store. I couldn't find exactly what I was looking for when I was on the hunt for my own wedding dress. And I was like, basically blind confidence, which I think you have to have sometimes if you're going to run with a business idea. I was like, I just feel like
I recommend it.
yeah, definitely have a lot of confidence that is not justified at all. And then you can just run with it. It'll be great. And so that's kind of what I was going for. So when I told everybody kind of knew I had this idea, I had run it by a lot of my close friends in my family. So it wasn't crazy to hear that this was a route I was considering. I think it happened a lot faster than people were expecting. So just knowing that the main kind of like the precipice of what made me do it when I did it was because of the pandemic, I basically got a free year of business because all the weddings in 2020, for the most part, were canceled. So I could get a lot of the consignment stock from people who planned on having weddings that didn't get to have their weddings. And I got a whole extra year of people shopping, maybe delayed a year. So I think once I kind of explained the timing of it, it made a lot more sense for the people around me. It definitely helps that my husband has a very stable job. So we are kind of able to take this leap. Plus the nature of bridal is most people shop on the weekends. So I was able to kind of soft launch this while I was still working my full-time job. Luckily, I worked for a video tech company. A lot of people did a lot of interesting side projects. We had like traveling, touring musicians. We had people doing consulting work on the side. So it wasn't crazy for people to also balance 2 things. So I basically only opened on the weekends to start. And that's why I was kind of able to prove it out a little bit, get through the growing pains initially while still kind of having this tech salary coming in. So I think that was a very
real quick. I want to jump in just because there's so many good things you just said to unpack, and we can keep going on this. So when you go back and you listen to this, think about what Molly just said right there. Everyone's panicking. It's the pandemic. And we talked about this, Jack, with past guys, everything. Opportunity is really in the eye of the beholder. So you just laid out so many fascinating things where you took this negative, you must have a background in sales as well, I'm guessing, or something, and made it positive, because that was fascinating the way I never even thought of that. Like getting that inventory on discount from consignment for that whole industry being shut down for a year. And I know event planners, I know people in that space, and they're crying, woe is me. And they've got that victim mindset. And you're over here bringing an absolute friggin' rock star, turning it around and launching, which just seriously, kudos to you. And again, it goes back to that mindset, which is, what was the why? What was the motivation? You touched a little bit on your wedding. What is the mission? What is the why behind all of this?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good question. So the main thing was I wanted to be able to make a slight impact. Like I I wanted to open a business that would be successful. I didn't go a nonprofit route. I'm not saying that I'm not a saint by any stretch of the imagination. If I'm going to open a business, I want to feel good about it. And I want to feel confident that it has the potential to be really successful. So for me, the why was taking this kind of new spin on a market and on an industry that has been around for so long, that is basically entirely proven out to be profitable. Yeah. People will spend money. People spend money on their pets, their weddings, and their kids, right? Those are like the three things that, will probably always be the case. So I was like, okay, we know people spend money on this. So that part, like the consumer portion we're good to go. But if I'm going to do it, I want to do it differently. And I also don't want to feel like crap about it. So I cared about the kind of sustainable aspect of waste and clothing and fashion personally. And so I could make this I was like, I think I can do a twist on this. And then I knew in the area, Boston area, there wasn't a store focused on sustainability. There's a lot of bridal stores, but there was this niche that was kind of just untapped generally. So for me, the why was I love this industry and I enjoyed planning my wedding and spending time doing this. And I care about this cause. How can I kind of combine these two things? Because I know other people care about it. And it's true. I've been reached out to a lot to kind of talk about sustainability in the wedding industry. It's very buzzwordy, very popular to talk about right now. So clearly it was like kind of the right time to do this as people are caring more and more as the obvious effects of climate change. People are kind of experiencing them and they're living them in their day-to-day life. So that helps a lot too when you're seeing it happen around you and you're like, how can I make a difference on something I was already going to spend money on?
Well, and I'm just taking all the time. I'm sure Jack's had a million questions. I have so many questions because
from our intro here. I'm gonna go.
I didn't realize the wedding dress game. Like I knew a little bit about it. My wife's done events in the past. Yeah. But like a question for that leads to, as you're talking, I'm thinking like, what is the goal? Maybe you haven't mapped this out yet, but I know as entrepreneurs are always thinking, is this scalable? Are you looking to take this model nationwide? Are you trying to be very boutique-ish? Where are you going with this?
Yes. So I personally want to keep it like maybe multiple locations in the area, but I love having kind of ownership over this one place and this one thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think there is a lot of e-commerce opportunities to build off of the brand. So that is a potential route that I'm considering, whether it be like a accessory line or something like that I can also do kind of e-commerce on the side. But I think the brick and mortar boutique experience, I think, is what makes it really special. And that's kind of what I've heard from people who have come to the store and purchased so far too. So I don't ever want to fully give that up. And I think I would lose that with scale to an extent. So I do know that means from a growth perspective, there is a cap if I do just kind of stick to one or two locations. But I am generally okay with that. I think I would consider an e-commerce route potentially once everything's really running on its own.
And I read a fascinating book, Jack. I was telling you about it, called Upside. The guy gets into demographics and demographic data. Can't recommend the book enough. But harkening back to your industry and what you said, and I didn't even think of this as an industry he's relating to, he believes and he projects between 2016 and 2036, American consumerism and made goods here in America, even adjusting for costs, are going to start to be consumed more as people are starting to value quality over quantity. And we move away from that Chinese model. It seems like your timing might have been great. I know you talked about that. Can you touch on the difference with something quality and being reusable and going consignment versus something cheap and used once? Can you kind of get into that a little bit?
Totally. Yes. So the nature of especially bridal, right? You're spending a ton of money. It's not kind of like you're not just buying a sustainable t-shirt that you'll wear, for a few years or something like that. You're spending a lot more money on it. So you can kind of guarantee and expect that the quality is going to be a lot higher, especially when manufactured by hand in the United States. Part of the thing that works really well, like sustainable and ethical are often together. You can't have a sustainable material or brand without them creating ethically. So they're having well-paid, well-trained labor creating their garments. A lot of my designers are creating it by hand with maybe one or two people in New York, in Connecticut, in California. So they are all very local and, they're very well trained and they're sourcing the best of materials. So those are the kinds of things that are really important with sustainability. And the quality will be much higher because it's made in small batch and by hand. It's not mass produced. So that's one of the biggest components of that. And I totally agree that people are starting to realize the quality over time. And I think the things that were created overseas 10 years ago, I have like shirts and things that I bought from very cheap brands 10, 15 years ago that are much better quality than something I would buy now from a cheap brand. So I think that over time, it's really changed a lot. And that's why people are placing more value. They want to put their money where it matters, even if it's smaller purchases, and especially when it's these larger purchases, they want the quality there.
Absolutely. How has the consignment game been? Has that been an interesting revenue generator? I got to imagine that's a pretty cool niche. If you haven't anybody touch on that, can you touch on that real quick?
Totally. Yeah. So from a revenue perspective, it does create less revenue than if we do made to order, but it's a really nice it's a way to maintain stock. So basically have dresses in the store. Over time, I've learned a lot about what sells from a consignment and from a used perspective and what doesn't. So I have gotten pickier with what I choose to kind of put on my racks in the store from that component. But people are they like the idea of buying things on consignment. I think it's really appealing to people to know that, one, they can walk out of the store with it that day. I think that part is very appealing. They don't have to wait 4 or 6 months for this piece. So I think that's really good for people, especially when still, things are still unpredictable with events and the pandemic, with COVID. So people think their wedding's happening, then they don't. So they don't buy a dress. And then at some last minute, the numbers go down. So they are going to get married. So they want to be able to grab something quickly. It's become less and less of my inventory just because I think people, as much as people come in and they want that specific thing, more people want a dress made to their
fall in love with the idea of being their dress. Gotcha.
Exactly. So I think that happens a lot more. So I've adjusted a bit. Initially, I was actually just going to open the store on consignment with no made to order, but I worried about the amount of work it would be to maintain a full store of inventory in that way, which it has been harder to do. So I am glad that I split the revenue or split the streams in that way.
An entrepreneur had to be flexible, Jack. Imagine that. Everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth.
Exactly.
All right. So can I geek out for a second real quick?
Yes, you can.
So I don't think I've ever brought this up on the podcast, but when in college, I was an economics major. I love economics. Demographics are huge to me. That's why I'm in real estate. There's a huge supply imbalance. The supply doesn't match the demand by any stretch of the imagination. That's why I love real estate right now. I've never heard someone talk about the shift, the result of COVID. Again, Mike, it goes back to the yellow Porsche I always talk about. When you're looking for the yellow Porsche example, if you drive a yellow Porsche, you're going to see yellow Porsches all over the road. Whenever you buy a car, you see your car everywhere. Mm-hmm. So when you're looking for the opportunities, you find those opportunities. This is the ultimate example of the situation where something like that happens. I love that. Just geeking out. I love that. And to capitalize on the economic shift, the demographic shift, millennials aging, marrying, it's just, I feel like it's the perfect timing. And I just want to geek out for a second. That's it.
Yeah. And to your point, no, it's a good point. And Molly, it's funny. I'd actually even tell you, check out that book if you get a chance, because he gets into all this. And Jack, to harken back to as we're putting all the tools in our tool belt as business owners and entrepreneurs, he made so many good points around brands and industries. Like one quick example from the book that I never thought of, the Barbie dolls in America, right? You're like, okay, Barbie's Barbie. Well, shareholders and stock price, we're going to go up. Demand can only go up. What they didn't realize was the generation coming behind the previous generation had 12 million fewer people. So just by nature, there were 12 million fewer little children to buy Barbie dolls. Mm. So they overbought, stock tanked, it went down. It's all these things play a factor. And you just hit on it with so many different elements, from the quality to the price point to the brick and mortar experience and actually retail. And before we, kind of transition on to the end of the show, you're living, Mike, breathing it. I talked to a couple other people. Go ahead. What were you going to say, Jack? Was that
the the Levi Strauss example too? Was that the same book where they talked about Levi, their demographic is 30 to 40 years old, but then they aged out and they have no one to buy it. So the stock price tanked.
It's the exact same book. Okay. Exact same one. I can't recommend it enough. It's actually a phenomenal book. And just framing your thinking around business. Again, Upside is the name of the book. On that note, though, where I was going with it, Molly, is retail, brick and mortar is actually doing quite well, despite what the mainstream media likes to tell people. Can you touch on that a little bit? How's foot traffic been for you? I mean, and what's considered the worst foot traffic time in the history of mankind? How's it been?
Yeah, so it's slightly different because we operate by appointment only. So it's a little bit different than the classic kind of storefront experience with foot traffic. But I think there's also an element of when there's only so many appointments that can be booked, people kind of rush to book them and they want to get in. There's this exclusivity component of bridal, which is helpful, but also people really do shop around. So, people are scheduling going to 3 or 4 stores in a row on a Saturday. So, people are kind of making the rounds. So that's a part where it's important to kind of stand out in your experience and your stock and all of that. But especially last summer. So knowing that 2022 was going to be crazy for weddings, last summer, my opening weekend, I was fully booked. The entire summer was really, really busy. Yeah. So that was very exciting at the beginning, being like, I'm literally making up.
Because you never know, right? You never know how it's going to start until you start. And then you go, oh my God. What's going on?
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. So at the beginning, it was crazy busy all over the summer because people are told to shop a year in advance of their weddings typically. So, so basically summer into winter, spring tends to be slow for bridal across the board. It's just kind of the nature of it as things are ramping up. Then it picks up again, June, July, all the way through the end of the year. They say the best time for bridals between Thanksgiving and Christmas. People are with their families. They want to go on these experiences. That's when they're shopping. But people are going, like, you have to go in person to find a wedding dress. So that helps. I mean, people do order online, but you don't want to spend multiple thousands of dollars on something you can't return on the internet. It's very different than, a little different. So it's been busy. It's very busy out there, and I'm seeing it across the board in the industry. So yeah, I would say there's plenty of foot traffic out there, despite what they're saying. Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, you mentioned lifestyle design. I know your shop is relatively close to your house. Is a appointment only, is that a necessity, or is that part of the lifestyle design aspect?
So it's a little bit of both. So it is fairly typical for bridal. Most of the time people are scheduling appointments. It's a bonus for me. That's why I was excited about getting into that business for sure. And why I'm my only employee, right? So like, it's just me. I'm only there when I need to be there, which is really nice. Basically, I've found that the stores that do walk-ins, they don't sell. The people who are walking in just to casually look around, maybe have a fun day with their friends, get a free glass of champagne, like they're not going to buy a wedding dress. So it seems like it's kind of like, protecting my time, as well as it's pretty industry standard, especially in Boston. We have a lot of benefits of being in a city and a more affluent state, because I can charge for appointments. That's fairly typical across the board in the area, and it's by appointment only. So I was able to kind of build on some of the things that are more common in this area as well.
That's awesome. That's good to know. So perfect. Speaking of that, because obviously you're an absolute rock star and you're killing it. And I can't wait to ask this question. So come from a different industry. One question we like to ask every guest every week: what is one book or resource you recommend to Tell Us Why financial freedom community?
Yes. Okay. So my answer is a little non-traditional in this one. It's not an actual book, but because sustainable bridal, it's so niche. The thing for me that I found was finding online groups and very particular resources. So I'm in Facebook groups with other store owners, sustainability podcasts, and I took sustainability courses online. I read bridal store accounting books. The accounting is very interesting for the business. So if you're going into an industry that is very, very niche, there's probably not a book that would help everybody. So that's why I'm just kind of saying that for me, the resources that were really specific that I had to dig for have been the best for me when opening the store. So you'd be surprised at how many Facebook groups are out there for very specific things.
I mean, that's a great point. Like, people might not be in bridal, but there is something out there. Like, that's like you said, niche product. So there is groups like that out there, no matter what you want to get into or what you are into. So there's always resources out there. I like that.
And staying with that, I mean, when you go back and listen to this episode, and what I hope people really get out of it is just being a problem solver, not a problem creator. I mean, look at the common theme with everything coming to it, going out, finding your resources, going out, finding the answers yourself, building up that network, building up that community that you can rely upon, seeing opportunity where other people see problems. Just really, really great stuff all around.
Yeah.
I mean, we could geek out on this all day, Jack, but I think unfortunately we got to be respectful of the clock here. So with that said, should we transition into the big three, Jack Dalrymple?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
After we forgot how to talk today.
US private lending
again. Oh my God.
It's now time for the Big Three segment, brought to you by QS Private Lending. Are you looking to finance your next deal quickly and reliably with less hassle and paperwork? QS Private Lending is one of the oldest and largest hard money lenders to real estate investors in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. Our quick and simple short-term loans require no appraisals and have enabled hundreds of builders and investors to profitably acquire and renovate thousands of residential and commercial properties. To experience the QS difference for yourself, call or text Luke Conroy today at 315-323-0250. That's 315-323-0250. QS Private Lending.
Now it is time for the big three. These are the three questions we ask every guest every week, and I will kick it off with a college question. So I know you're a part of the mafia. No big deal.
Emerson.
Yeah.
Emerson,
you know it.
Mafia. But in your opinion, is college worth it?
Socially, absolutely, I would say. And I think you mentioned the Emerson Mafia. We're known for that. I think there's a lot of connections there that absolutely make it worth it. Especially, it's helped with actually a lot of press for the store and opening the business. So that alone, I think, has definitely made it worth it for sure.
So can I jump in right there? So you're saying
resources.
Oh, yeah. I got to jump in. I'm not letting this go without saying this. So you're saying you use that Facebook group successfully, as you should, with your network. So it's almost like if you were the producer of a podcast and you were part of that same group, you shouldn't get off Facebook. You should probably go into the group and promote it. That's weird. Interesting take there, Jake Bennett.
Who are you talking about?
Executive producer. Anyways, we'll discuss that after the show. Moving on to question number 2. In Europe, what is one piece of actionable advice you want to go back and give to your 18-year-old self?
Yes, I would say that group projects actually set you up for success in the real world. So don't complain about them.
Wow, I like that a lot. That is, look at that. Take that to the bank. You hear that, yep. Jack? Be a team player, not an individual.
It's the inverse of education these days. You that's for yourself. Like, that's a good point, though. Like in school, you're taught to do everything by yourself. If you work with somebody else, that's a problem. That's called cheating in schooling these days. That's the issue that I have.
Change it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like that a lot. All right. So now I'm moving on to the other end of the spectrum. What is one thing you would want your 90-year-old self to say to you?
I would want to say to me that I optimized for a happy, a fulfilling life and made a little bit of a difference.
I think you're going to make a lot of a difference. I don't think it's going to be a little bit of a difference. You're an absolute star. Where can people get in touch with you? Where can they learn more about you and Glo Bridal?
Yes. So you can find our website, globridal.com. On Instagram, we're gloglo.bridal. Those are the main places that we hang out, and you can find lots of information about us.
All right.
Okay. Actually, before we let you go, where did Glo come from? Where did the name come from?
Yes. So Glo is named after my grandmother, who we called G-Lo affectionately because she wore matching sweatsuits like J-Lo. So Grandma G-Lo. And she was obsessed with her wedding. She talked about it all the time. So when I was kind of going the route of reusable vintage vibes for the store, it just felt right because that's also an adjective that is often used for a bride at their wedding. You're glowing. So it all just kind of came together. I wanted a name I could feel really good about that had some sort of meaning. And that's where Glo's from.
All right, perfect. I like it.
And
Before we let you go, is there anything else you'd like to tell our listeners?
I think that's it. I really appreciate you guys having me on and talking about bridal, not your usual subject matter, but you guys seem to know a lot about it or very
learned.
In it. So,
we learned a lot.
Like
I said, and again, we apologize. I can't imagine what it's like being friends with Jake. So thank you for coming on and not holding that against me and Jack. Jack, where can people learn more about the Tell Us Why podcast?
Well, you got to check out the Tell Us Why podcast website. www.telluswhypodcast. Imagine that. If you don't already follow us on social media, you can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, basically everywhere. All the links are in the description below. Links to Glo Bridal are also there. If you're new and just listening for the first time, head over to our YouTube channel and subscribe.
or check us out on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, Podbean, wherever you listen to your podcast. Click, subscribe, leave a rating, review. You get great content like this every week. You're learning about a bunch of different industries, especially if you're seeking financial freedom. Jack, quote of the week.
He who blames others has a long way to go on his journey. He who blames himself is halfway there. He who blames no one has arrived. It's an old Chinese proverb. I don't have an actual.
I like that a lot, though.
Author on
Total
that
accountability. I love it.
Oh, that is it for today. Be sure to join us for next week's episode. And until next week,
bet on yourself.